In April 1981, the remains of a young woman were found in Spring Hill, Florida. The crime was immediately linked to a perpetrator, but it would take more than 4 decades for the woman to be identified due to the use of new DNA technology. During March and April of 1981, 4 bodies were uncovered from a sprawling junkyard on the property of Billy Mansfield Jr. in Spring Hill, Florida. It took weeks for excavators and deputies to find the 4 bodies, and then only 2 of the female victims were quickly identified. Mansfield was the eldest son of convicted child abuser William Mansfield Sr. Mansfield Jr. was in and out of prison starting in mid-1970s, including a stint in Michigan in 1977 for sexual misconduct. He was released after only a few months, after he testified against his cellmate. While out on parole in that case, he assaulted 2 teenagers and found himself back in jail. His other convictions included battery, kidnapping, and assault. After his release, he took up work at a mushroom farm in Santa Cruz, California, where he lived with his brother, Gary. There, he met married mother of 3, 29-year-old Renee Saling, at a tavern on December 6, 1980. The following day, passing motorists found Renee's partially clothed body in a drainage ditch in Watsonville, California. A post-mortem examination revealed that she was assaulted and strangled to her end. The Mansfield brothers were arrested days later, but only Billy was charged with first-degree slaying. He was eventually convicted and sentenced to 25 years to life after a mistrial and an attempted prison escape. Gary Mansfield was charged with accessory after the fact for Renee's slaying, but he turned state's witness and was relieved of the charge. Publicity from that case led an anonymous tipster to ask Hernando County officials to search Mansfield's home for Sandra Graham, a 21-year-old who went missing from Tampa on April 17, 1980. And then a year later, the excavation process started. Sandra Graham's remains were found there, as well as those of 15-year-old Elaine Ziegler, a tourist from Ohio who disappeared from a nearby campground on New Year's Eve in 1975. The women were assaulted by both Gary and Billy Mansfield along with their father, William Mansfield. Billy would then take their lives and dismember them. He then buried the women and teens in his yard because he wanted them close by. He never told the police who the Jane Does were. The unknown remains were sent to numerous labs over the years, but the investigators did not develop a DNA profile until 2020, almost 40 years later. The sample was sent to the University of North Texas, seeking a match in a national database without results. In 2022, they tried again using Parabon's Snapshot DNA phenotyping service, which creates a description of the victim rather than searching for a genetic match. The profile gave investigators an opportunity to generate their own leads, and a DNA sample from the victim's sister confirmed that the remains belonged to Theresa Caroline Fillingim. Theresa was reported missing in Tampa, Florida, by her sister on May 16, 1980. It was only a week before her 17th birthday. It is believed that she was abducted and slain that same day. Hernando cold case detective George Lloydgren said, "It is like a double-edged sword. It is sad in the sense that you are giving somebody the sad news that their loved one is deceased, but it is a positive and happy for me because I can know I am instrumental in bringing her home." Theresa's sister, Margaret Johns, said, "It gives me peace because I know I did not lose her, that she was taken. Now I can stop looking." Margaret said that she plans to cremate the remains and split the ashes with her brother. She also said, "The sad part of it is my whole family never knew what happened to her. My dad passed away without knowing. My mom passed away without knowing. My sister passed away without knowing." She added, 42 years is a long time. Life is short. It can be even shorter for some, and watch your back because there is a lot of bad people out there that will do a lot of bad things to people. In 1982, Mansfield did plead guilty to ending the lives of the 4 victims and received 4 additional life sentences and is serving at the California Healthcare Facility in Stockton. In March 1993, Lisa Estepp lost her life during a shooting. A suspect was immediately identified, but despite the detectives' efforts to gather enough evidence to arrest him, it would only happen after a breakthrough 3 decades later. On March 16, 1993, police officers were called to a shooting in the 1400 block of 4.5 Alley in Huntington, West Virginia. The woman was taken to a hospital where she later passed away. She lost her life due to being beaten and shot in her torso. She was identified as Lisa Estepp, also known as Melissa Lisa Martinez. During the investigation, several witnesses were interviewed. The interviews did lead the investigators to a possible suspect. Due to insufficient evidence to charge him with the crime, the case unfortunately went cold. Finally, after almost 30 years, the perpetrator was identified as 59-year-old Ricky Louis Woody. Woody moved from Huntington to Billings, Montana, within a year of Lisa's end. In December of 2020, he was arrested in Montana on charges not related to this case. In May 2021, detectives with the Billings Police Department contacted the Huntington Police Department and indicated that they had taken a statement from Woody regarding a slaying that occurred in Huntington in the early 1990s. Woody claimed that he knew the person responsible for taking the life of a woman known to him as Lisa. Woody provided what details he could recall to the detectives and ultimately admitted that he had participated in the crime. After receiving this information, Huntington police detectives reviewed the case file from 1993 and interviewed Woody in September 2021 at the Yellowstone County Detention Facility in Montana. That interview, along with evidence from the original investigation, led to Woody being charged with slaying in October 2022, after he was the primary suspect in 1993. Woody was taken into custody at the Yellowstone County Detention Facility in Montana. He was being held on several felony charges, including being a fugitive from justice and assault with a weapon. His bond there was $50,000. Woody had several legal matters to go through in Montana before he could be extradited to West Virginia. On January 16, 2024, he pleaded guilty and has been sentenced to 10 years to life with mercy in the case. The sentence is to run concurrent to a sentence he is currently serving in Montana, which means that once the Montana sentence is complete, he will be placed into the custody of the West Virginia Department of Corrections to serve the rest of this sentence in the Mountain State. In March 1992, 2 people were found deceased in Waupaca, Wisconsin. The perpetrator would only be identified 30 years later. He would give his side of the story, of how he was linked to one of the victims, but what he had done shocked himself too. On March 21st, 1992, 23-year-old Tanna Togstad and her boyfriend, 35-year-old Timothy Mumbrue, were found stabbed to their end in their Royalton farmhouse in Waupaca, Wisconsin. According to the autopsy report, Tanna lost her life due to 1 stab wound to the chest, while Timothy was stabbed approximately 27 times. Tanna was assaulted too. The couple's pet dog was also stabbed and passed away. The detectives gathered all evidence and fingerprints on the scene. They interviewed the neighbors and followed up on all leads. But due to the lack of DNA technology, the DNA extracts found could not be matched to suspects, and the case went cold. 3 decades later, in 2022, the police identified Tony Hayes as a suspect, and a DNA sample was taken from him during a traffic stop on July 6th. The traffic stop was staged, and they obtained Hayes' DNA from a pen he used to sign a warning ticket. Test results showed him to be a major male contributor to the fluids recovered from Tanna's body. 53-year-old Hayes initially denied any involvement, but during questioning, he eventually admitted to the slayings. He disclosed to the investigators that his father had been slain in a snowmobile accident when he was 5 or 8 years old. The investigators then did their research and confirmed that Hayes' father had passed away on December 31st in 1977, when Hayes was only 7 years old. Hayes continued and described that his father was operating a snowmobile in a group of 3 that was racing. The second snowmobile hit his father's, and his father lost his life. The third snowmobile then ran over the driver of the second. He described it as a horrible accident. Hayes explained that on the evening of March 20th, 1992, he became very drunk as he went from one bar to another by himself. For some reason, he started to think about the accident that ended his father's life. Those thoughts led to him going to the home of Tanna Togstad. As one of the drivers was Tanna's father, Hayes could not articulate why he went there, but insisted it was not to hurt anyone. He described himself as being in a drunken stupor that night. He described getting into a scuffle with Timothy. He could not remember if he had brought a knife or if the knife was at the house. During the scuffle, he and Timothy were wrestling while standing up, and he moved his arm in a stabbing motion toward Timothy's chest. He described Timothy falling to the floor near the foot of the bed. Hayes remembered Tanna yelling, and that is when he punched her in the face. It is believed he would have knocked her out at this time. At some point, she started to stir, and that is when he stabbed her in the chest. When asked why he did not tell investigators right away, Hayes replied, "I did not want it to sound like I had it planned." Hayes told the investigators that he did not know why he did it. He told the investigators that when he saw the news report, he thought, "What did I do?" In August 2022, Hayes was then charged with 2 counts of first-degree slaying. Richard Togstad, Tanna's brother, had the following to say after the charges was filed. "It was one of the happiest days of my life. I knew his dad, I knew his grandpa, I knew his grandma my whole life. I knew the family my whole life, but I did not know Tony per se." It was upsetting for Richard to learn that for 3 decades, the Hayes and the Togstads continued life as neighbors in the same community. Hayes lived less than a mile away from Richard's house for about 15 years, and less than 3 miles away in the years since then. Until his arrest, Hayes worked at the Waupaca foundry. Richard said that while he is happy his family is finally receiving closure after a 30-year mystery, he feels mixed emotions for Hayes' family, who he believes were completely blindsided by the whole thing. He said, "Let's face it, it is a bad deal all the way around. Their family, our family." Just days after Hayes' arrest, Richard and Tanna's mother, Helen Hoffman, passed away at age 82. On Facebook, Richard wrote, "My mother passed away finally at peace." In July 2024, Hayes' request to reduce his $2 million cash bond to $5,000 was denied. Because Hayes has been unable to post the bond, defense attorney John Birdsall asked for the bond to be lowered. He wants the ability to meet with Hayes in person more easily. Also, because of some delays in getting evidence, the defense claims Hayes is being punished by being held in custody. Special prosecutor Nathaniel Adamson opposed the motion, noting the strength of the evidence in the case. 3 relatives of the victims spoke, opposing the bond reduction request, with 2 asking for the bond to be increased. Tony Hayes' trial will start on July 14th, 2025, for the 1992 slayings of Tanna Togstad and Timothy Mumbrue. A 6-week trial is scheduled. In August 1980, skeletal remains were found in Washington. New DNA technologies would only bring a breakthrough to the case 4 decades later. On August 3, 1980, a landowner in northern Snohomish County, Washington, discovered human skeletal remains while walking on his property. The Snohomish County Sheriff's Office responded to the scene along with a deputy coroner. The skeletal remains were photographed and collected that afternoon, including a skull which showed evidence of a gunshot wound. A secondary search the following afternoon yielded more remains. No clothing, jewelry, or any other items that could have been used to aid in the identification of the remains were found. The following day, an autopsy confirmed that the trauma noted on the skull was in fact a gunshot wound, and the case was classified as a slaying. The remains belonged to a white, possible mixed-race male, approximately 23 to 28 years of age, and 5 feet 5 inches to 5 feet 9 inches in height, with exceptional dental work. A dental exam was conducted of the skull and jawbone, including x-rays and dental charting, to be compared to known missing persons. A clay facial reconstruction was released to the public on November 21, 1980. The unknown man was then buried in the Arlington Municipal Cemetery on May 26, 1981. In the years that followed, the case grew cold. 28 years after the crime happened, in 2008, Detective Jim Scharf with the Snohomish County Sheriff's Office Cold Case Team and retired Snohomish County Superior Court Judge Ken Kausert began re-examining old, unsolved slayings cases in Snohomish County. With the emergence of new DNA technologies, the team was interested in exhuming this case with the hopes of obtaining DNA samples that were not taken during their initial exams. On August 8th, the Snohomish County Medical Examiner's Office entered the case into the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System and the FBI's National Crime Information Center database. Despite the entries, the case remained unsolved. 3 years later, in 2011, permission was obtained from the Snohomish County Prosecuting Attorney's Office to exhume the remains to obtain a DNA sample for the purpose of identification. The exhumation occurred on July 20th, 2011, with representatives with the Sheriff's Office, the Medical Examiner's Office, and Dr. Catherine Taylor, the Washington State forensic anthropologist, in attendance. The remains were then transported to the Medical Examiner's Office for further examination, but unfortunately, they were unable to obtain a usable sample. In 2016, forensic artist Natalie Murray examined the skull and mandible and provided the Medical Examiner's Office with a facial reconstruction sketch, which was released to the media in the hopes of generating new leads. In 2021, Othram was able to obtain a DNA sample that was sufficient for testing after multiple rounds of extraction and human enrichment. On November 16, 2021, through their research, Othram's own genetic genealogists were able to provide the Medical Examiner's Office with the name of a possible match, Ronald David Chambers. U.S. Marine Ronald Chambers was reported missing in King County by his family in 1979. He was last seen by his family on December 17, 1978. He left their SeaTac motel in a rental car and was never seen again. Ronald's sister was contacted and provided a DNA sample for comparison. On December 29, 2021, the relationship was confirmed by Family Tree DNA, and the remains were officially identified as Ronald David Chambers. The suspect in this case, Robert Hellberg, passed away in prison on March 29, 1993, so there was no arrest made in this case. Foul play was suspected at the time, but without a body, it could not be proved that Hellberg was guilty of ending a life. He returned to the motel later that day, driving Ronald's rental car. Just before Ronald vanished, he and Mary, with their infant son, stayed at the motel to help his friend, Hellberg, move from Arizona. When Hellberg returned without Ronald, he told Mary he believed that Ronald's life was taken by a hitman. Snohomish Detective Jim Scharf said that Hellberg had illegal substance connections that were maybe at a higher level than street level. They said Hellberg was a self-proclaimed hitman. Ronald's wife, Mary, said, "It has been a long time. He was 28, now he would be 71. I am really happy to have this moment and bring him home. Thank you very much to everyone for your persistence and dedication to seeing this through." Two friends attended a party in Tennessee in 2000 and then went missing. Or was that the case? An investigator who found a document and a YouTuber who found a vehicle brought the breakthrough 21 years later. 18-year-old Erin Foster and 17-year-old Jeremy Bechtel left Erin's home to attend a party in Sparta, Tennessee on April 3, 2000. Later that night, around 10 p.m., they were last seen together in her car, a black Pontiac Grand Am. Erin's father, Cecil Foster, said, "I called home on Monday night, and my wife told me Erin did not come home last night." Cecil told his wife not to worry about their daughter. Erin was 18 after all, and already talked about moving out. Then one night turned into another, and that was when panic sunk in. He said, "Just a nightmare, man. Just a total nightmare." No one saw them alive again, prompting rumors and speculation of their whereabouts, including false reports of sightings. Searches were undertaken locally and also in Pensacola, Florida, during 2005 and 2006, following reports that Erin was living and working there. Erin was the perfectionist and Jeremy was the athlete, two White County High School best friends who cared about each other and their families. White County Sheriff Steve Page joined the case 11 years later in 2011. He said that he had gathered all the information he could at the office and asked the investigators from the past for their documents on this case. That is when he came across one piece of paper that changed everything. Investigators were fixated on the idea that a party on the west end of the county was somehow involved. Everyone assumed the two friends had left the party on their way home, but the document showed it was the other way around. Based on the report, the two were traveling from Erin's home and not the party. This meant detectives were focused on the wrong end of the county. On November 24, 2021, YouTuber Jeremy Beau Sides, who creates videos where he uses sonar technology and dives underwater to track down evidence in missing persons cases, shot a video showing his discovery of a 1998 Pontiac Grand Am that belonged to Erin. Sheriff Page said, "I told him I believe they went missing off of Highway 84. After Jeremy's discovery, the car was pulled from the Calf Killer River, and the human remains found in the vehicle was sent for testing. The remains have then been identified as belonging to Erin and Jeremy, and the teens have been laid to rest by their families." Jeremy Sides said in his video, "I am lost for words. I am so glad I could find them. I am so sad that is where they ended up. I cannot believe it has been over 20 years that they have been sitting there waiting for someone to find them." The lead investigator for the White County Sheriff's Office said that they have ruled out foul play in the demises. The police have theorized that Erin lost control of her vehicle while driving on Highway 84, which did not have a guardrail along that section in 2000. In July 1981, human remains were found near Tavern Creek in Missouri. Ricky Ridings lost his life during a shooting. The breakthrough would only come after a recorded prison phone call and would lead to the victim's family thanking the perpetrator. On July 8, 1981, the Callaway County Sheriff's Office responded to a report of human remains found in a car parked alongside Little Tavern Creek, outside Portland, Missouri. A woman and her 3 granddaughters walked along Tavern Creek and then stumbled upon a blue pickup truck that smelled terribly. The remains, buried under a blanket, were identified as belonging to 27-year-old Ricky Ridings from St. Peter's, using his driver's license and old scars. A close-range shotgun blast, plus several days of decomposing in the summer heat, had obscured his features, the medical examiner concluded. He had been reported missing on June 30th, 1981. The Callaway County Sheriff's Office immediately started investigating this shooting case. The gruesome case dominated local headlines for days, but despite a vigorous investigative effort, it went unsolved. However, a breakthrough occurred 36 years later in 2017, when they received information from Conrad Schmidt III. Schmidt, who had been serving a life sentence since 1998 for an unrelated slaying, confessed to taking the life of Ricky during a recorded prison phone call. The following year, in 2018, Ricky's body was exhumed to reevaluate the evidence. The Ridings family was notified of the new developments in their case, and further witnesses were interviewed. On August 20th, 2023, the case reached its conclusion when Schmidt pleaded guilty to slaying. He was then sentenced to 10 more years in prison. As part of the plea deal, he provided specific details and answered the family's questions, granting them the closure they had long sought. He spoke to Ricky's sister and niece. Prosecuting attorney Ben Miller said, "This case presented a rare opportunity to offer the closure the Ridings family rightfully deserved. Closure in comprehending the circumstances surrounding Ricky's tragic fate." At the end of the sentencing, the Ridings family thanked Mr. Schmidt for his candor regarding his role in Ricky's end. demonstrating a remarkable and extremely unique instance of restorative justice.